So you have an idea for a startup. That's great. And you might be wondering, what do I do now? I mean, how do I get started? I can imagine a lot of things I could do. It's kind of overwhelming. Hi, I'm Steve Morris. That's the question I'll be tackling today. A very common question we get from first-time entrepreneurs. How do I start? I'm going to describe the 8 steps I suggest an entrepreneur go through when they have a new idea for a company. Now, I did not want this to be a 2-hour video, so I'm going to touch on each of the 8 steps pretty lightly, but I promise we'll have more videos that go into each of these in more detail with very practical, step-by-step, how do you do all of this. So with that, let's get started with step 1. So step 1 is to be disruptive. Now, what do I mean by being a disruptive startup? I mean disruptive in the sense of disruptive innovation as described by Clayton Christensen in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma. In many markets, what happens is companies keep competing head to head. They keep making their products better and better and better. And they get to the point where a lot of people get left behind. Left behind in the sense that they don't need all that capability that all that competition is developing. And they can't afford it. They would be totally happy with something much less capable and lower cost, or something that was easier to use. And the problem is that's usually not available. All a disruptive innovation is a product that takes advantage of those underserved customers that got left behind, with a product that typically is less capable, but also less expensive, but good enough. Now, why do you care about being disruptive? There is research that pretty strongly suggests that startups that utilize a disruptive innovation are more likely to be successful. Okay? That's probably a good reason to be disruptive. So it's a good idea to assess your idea. Is it a disruptive innovation? Are you addressing a customer segment that got left behind, that wants a capability that other people have, but they don't have access to it, probably because they can't afford it or because it's just too inconvenient to get to? On to step 2. Step 2 is to take the time to validate your startup idea. Way too many entrepreneurs get an idea, check it with a few friends, and then jump in and start developing the product or service. Please don't fall into that trap. You are miles ahead if you take the time to test your idea, and your odds of success will be higher if you do that. What do I mean by testing or validating your idea? Well, number one, I mean talking to customers to figure out essentially whether or not they'll buy it if you go ahead and build it. This is called customer discovery. It's not perfect, but it's the best way to get a better idea as to whether or not there is a market for your idea. But there's more than just testing it with customers. The other question is just, does the business model make sense? There are a lot of factors that are tied up in the revenue opportunity on the one hand and the cost involved on the other hand. You need to understand those to get an idea as to whether there might be a profitable business here. So take time to validate your idea. Your odds of startup success will be significantly higher. Step 3. You're using a disruptive innovation strategy. You've validated your idea. You're reasonably confident that there's a there there, that if you build it, they will come and you can sell it for a profit. This is a good time to set up a legal entity. So first, you'll have to choose what kind, probably a choice between an LLC and a C Corp and an S Corp. Talk to an attorney, make the decision. My non-legal opinion is the most important thing is to just decide and do it. Get an entity set up because there are so many advantages in having a legal entity. It can own intellectual property. It can have a checking account. It can sign contracts. Lots of advantages. So go ahead and get a legal entity set up. That's step 3. Step 4, organize your startup. Get organized early on when it's easy. And that comes down to really a couple of key things. Number 1, your records. If you've set up a legal entity, you already have some important records. You have your corporate or LLC records. File them, create a filing system, and over time, keep maintaining it. So as you get more and more important documents, they get filed so that you can find them. Down the road, when it's time to do due diligence with a banker or an investor, it'll be much, much easier to do that if you can actually find the documents that you need to find. So, huge advantage if you get organized early on when it's easy. The second thing to organize is your finances. You'll want to very early talk to an accountant. Get a chart of accounts set up for your business. Get set up on some kind of an accounting system, like probably QuickBooks is the most common one, and start capturing your transactions. It's easy to do early on. There aren't very many each month when you're small. You can do it yourself. You don't need a bookkeeper. But as you start capturing those transactions, you're capturing your financial history. Down the road, when you need to do financial statements, which you will when you talk to a banker or an investor, it'll be much, much easier to do if you've captured all of that financial history. So start today when it's easy and just keep it up over time to maintain your own financial history. Get organized today. Don't put it off. Step 5, protect your intellectual property. Every startup has intellectual property that needs to be protected. You'll have things you should protect with copyrights and with trademarks and with trade secrets and maybe some other things like trade dress protection and maybe even patent protection. Again, whatever your startup is doing, you have important intellectual property. It's important to get educated about what things need to be protected and what you need to do to protect that intellectual property, because that's a key asset for your startup. You've set up an entity, you've done the right things to protect your intellectual property, you're ready to build a team now. Now, there's a lot involved in building a team. Initially you may work with some contractors. You need to make sure that you own the intellectual property that they develop. You may bring on some co-founders. You have to be careful about how you go about distributing stock and make sure that stock's protected just in case they leave the company early. You need to think about other team issues down the road, like employees and staying out of trouble. It's easy to get into trouble by having bad hiring practices. And eventually you'll probably want to put a board of advisors in place and eventually a board of directors. Lots of bases to cover when it comes to building a team. And of course, team's critical. Being careful, selecting the right people, and if you make a mistake, fixing that sooner than later. All of those are important. So a lot of topics around team. But once you've done the basics of getting the legal entity in place and protecting your IP, at least you're ready to start building your team. Step 7, develop a funding plan. Now this one is more of a challenge, but it basically comes down to developing the set of fundable milestones for your company. Milestones are key because they give you something to focus on. Startups, there are always things happening that will distract you. Having a key milestone in front of you to keep you and the entire company focused is very important. But it's not just a milestone, it's a fundable milestone. What do you need to accomplish so that that will give you enough credibility to access the next source of funding? Initially, you might just have your own resources and your founding team resources, but what can you do to make enough headway just with what you have so that maybe you could raise a friends and family round, or maybe you could do a crowdfunding campaign, whatever it is that's that next fundable milestone. So think about the fundable milestones that you can identify going out for, say, at least a couple of years, and do some basic cash planning to figure out really how much money would you need to raise in order to hit each subsequent milestone. That's the basic of a basic idea in a startup funding plan. And finally, that leads us to step 8, which is execute. Focus on that first milestone that you identified, which again is a fundable milestone, right? Focus on that, nail it, and by definition that means that hopefully, being a fundable milestone, you then have access to that next level of funding, which will allow you to then tackle the very next more challenging milestone and continue to build your company. Those are the 8 steps, again, that I suggest you pursue when you have a new idea. We'll tackle all of these in more detail in follow-on videos, so please hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of those. And if this was helpful, please hit the like button too. That helps immensely. And if you have any questions or comments about what I've said, or suggestions for future topics to tackle, please leave a comment. And finally, if you'd like a document that summarizes everything I've talked about in this video, in the show notes, you'll find a download link where you can get a cheat sheet that lists all of these basic ideas. That's it for this time. Again, please hit subscribe. I hope you'll join us for the next video. Thanks.